The Man at the Window. Sarah lived alone in a quiet apartment on the third floor of an old, worn-out building downtown. It wasn't the most luxurious place, but it had charm, and it was cheap. Perfect for her. She enjoyed the quiet evenings after work, especially the peaceful hours when the city outside seemed to fall asleep. It was around 1:30 a.m. when she first heard it, a soft, irregular tapping sound. At first, she dismissed it as her neighbors moving around or the pipes groaning, but it persisted, faint yet steady. Tap, tap, tap. She stirred in bed, her mind foggy from sleep. Groggily, she glanced around her dark room. It was one of those nights where everything felt too still, too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. The tapping came again, a little louder this time. Her heart gave a dull thud. She listened carefully, now fully awake. The sound was definitely coming from outside her bedroom window. Living on the third floor, she wasn't used to any sort of disturbances this high up. The only thing directly outside was the fire escape. She shook her head, convincing herself it was probably just a branch brushing against the glass, or maybe a bird. Still, something didn't feel right. Reluctantly, Sarah climbed out of bed, her feet cold against the hardwood floor. She crept toward the window, trying to keep her breathing steady. The blinds were drawn, and she hesitated, fingers brushing the cord. Tap, tap, tap. Her breath caught in her throat. She slowly pulled the blinds open just a sliver, enough to peek out. At first, all she saw was the dull glow of the street lamp below. Nothing strange. She let out a relieved sigh. It was just her imagination, surely. But as she started to turn away, her eye caught something. Movement. She froze. There, standing on the fire escape, was a man. His face was partially obscured by shadows, but the streetlight caught just enough of his features to send a jolt of fear through her. He looked off. His clothes were ragged, and his eyes were wide, unnervingly so, staring directly at her through the window. He didn't move, except for one hand, which he raised slowly, fingers dragging across the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Sarah gasped, stumbling backward. Her heart was racing now, pounding in her chest so hard it hurt. The man remained still, just staring, his hand continuing that slow, deliberate tapping against the window. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking, and quickly dialed 911. The operator picked up, her calm voice a stark contrast to Sarah's panic. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man on my fire escape, Sarah whispered, eyes darting back to the window. The man hadn't moved, his unblinking eyes still locked on hers. Is he trying to get inside? The operator asked. No, Sarah said, glancing at the latch on her window. But he's just standing there, staring at me. Stay on the line with me, ma'am. Help is on the way. Sarah moved away from the window, her back pressed against the wall, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She kept her eyes on the man, but the longer she watched, the stranger everything seemed. He wasn't behaving like someone trying to break in. He just stood there, tapping, watching. Minutes passed like hours until the distant wail of sirens cut through the night. The tapping stopped. Sarah glanced at the window, expecting the man to flee. But when she looked again, the fire escape was empty. He was gone. The police arrived shortly after. They checked the area, but found no signs of forced entry. No sign that anyone had been there at all. Are you sure you saw someone? One of the officers asked as they scanned the fire escape. I'm not crazy, Sarah insisted, still trembling. He was there. He was right there. The officers gave her sympathetic looks, but without any evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They assured her they'd patrol the area and told her to call if anything else happened. But as they left, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. She triple-locked her windows and doors, trying to convince herself it was all over. She sat down on the edge of her bed, her nerves still frayed. Out of instinct, she glanced at her phone. It had been recording during the call to 911. Curious, she pressed play. The call began as normal, her panicked voice explaining the situation to the operator. But as the recording continued, she heard something that made her blood turn cold. In the background of the call, just behind her own frantic words, was the faint sound of tapping.